I've squat well over 750 pounds in competition multiple times. I've set world records in the squat. I've been competing internationally as a drug-free powerlifter for the past 5 to 6 years. My point is, I have spent a lot of time under the barbell squatting heavy weights. A common question I get is how someone should warm up to a new 1-rep max, or really any heavy set of squats for that matter. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly that. Real quick, before we dive into everything, I have two major announcements. Number one, the Ultimate Squat System PDF is now available for pre-order. It launches October 25th. I spent the last several months building this beast. It's gonna have at least 3 programs in it: an 8-week beginner, 12-week intermediate, 12-week advanced. What PDF has 3 freaking programs in it? In addition to that, I've written over 50 pages of content all about technique breakdowns, mindset talk, general training guidance, things like accessory work, RPE stuff, all of that. It's jam-packed with information. It's only $47, and no, the price will not go up. If you pre-order, you'll get access to a private/exclusive group call with everyone who pre-ordered, and I'm basically just gonna give you direct feedback and support on a live call, on a live Q&A. Second announcement is my one-to-one coaching is still available. I'd love to work with you, especially if you're watching this video. You're probably pretty committed, disciplined, and focused, and that's exactly the type of person I wanna work with. So you can apply at the link in the description, all right? Without further ado, let's dive into the video. Now, there are some major things I want you to be thinking about when it comes to warming up to a heavy set of squats, or more specifically, like a new 1-rep max or something like that, all right? But before we talk about those major points, I have to preface with something, okay? I'm not going to talk about all of the programming decisions that happen leading up to a test day, up to a meet day, up to the time when you're gonna try and hit a new PR, okay? This video is more about the actual day that you're hitting the PR, okay? But it's important to mention all of the real preparation happens in the weeks leading up, not in the sets leading up to it, okay? In other words, all of the real preparation when you're trying to hit a new squat 1RM, or really any heavy set of squats that's gonna be some sort of PR for you, all that preparation should happen in the system that you've designed and implemented leading up to that day. It's not gonna just come to you. It's not gonna just happen in the sets leading up, meaning on the day of. Okay, so just please make sure that you're designing your training program so that it makes sense. It helps you build up to, prepare you for this new 1RM squat. In other words, I don't want you just walking to the gym some random day and trying to max out. Okay, let's be smarter than that. Point number one, very simple, very obvious. Try not to deviate from your routine. Try not to deviate from your normal habits. Okay, this is very obvious, but you'd be surprised how many lifters ignore this, especially newer lifters, younger lifters, people who don't necessarily compete or train in strength sports full time, I'll say. It's just very common for people to just, the day that they're gonna go for a big PR, change everything. They think that they need to do something special, do something different in order to achieve some goal that they have, when actually it's the opposite. Trust your training, trust what you've been doing. You know, you can rely more on the methods you've been using to create a particular outcome than the methods you haven't been using, right? Because if you've used these methods, you know exactly what they're going to produce. And so you want to stack the odds in your favor. Now is not the time to change your environment, equipment, food, rituals, warm-ups, and technique. Okay, and we'll go through each of these, but you just want to try to stick to your normal routine. And if you did want to change any of those methods, any of those systems, do it in training. Do it in the weeks leading up, to try it out, to practice it, to rehearse it, to see what outcomes you get as a result of it. That way, come meet day or come your PR day, the outcome is way more predictable, okay? All right, so just to quickly brush through these things, environment, this is very self-explanatory. Try to control your environment. If you normally train at XYZ gym, when you go for your PR, go to XYZ gym. Now, sometimes this is outside of your control, and we'll talk about this in a second, but you know, you control what you can control, okay? If it is something that, you know, you're traveling for a meet, or you have a big championship, or maybe you just simply can't train at the gym that you normally do, or take your PR lift at the gym you normally do, then that's okay. You know, you can work around it. But if it is within your control, let's try and stay on top of that. Equipment, this is very obvious. Now is not the time to try a new belt. Now is not the time to try different squat heels, although I am a culprit of that. Do as I say, not as I do. Food, again, same thing. I know so many lifters that change this. They all of a sudden bring a pack of Skittles and gummy bears and start shoving them down their face. You know, they're barely drinking any water. They're taking like 500 milligrams of caffeine, and they would never do any of that during training. It's just on this one day that they think they need to do this. Doesn't make sense. Again, it's just now another variable that we're throwing into the mix that, look, even if you end up having a successful day, now you don't totally know what contributed to it, right? Because you added in all these new variables that you've never accounted for before. So again, you try and keep everything consistent. Rituals, warm-ups, technique, all this is, again, it's all the same shit. It all follows suit. All this stuff, try and keep things relatively the same. And technique is a big one here because I know a lot of lifters who will just start questioning themselves, questioning their technique because they get so worried about the number that they've chosen to try and hit that they start hesitating and wondering whether or not they should start changing everything to make sure that they hit that goal. Just trust your training. Trust your preparation. That's why I prefaced this all before with all the real prep happens prior to the day, not in the sets leading up to that big PR, okay? Now, the last thing I'm going to mention here before we move on is trust your ability to adapt. This is a big one. As somebody who has traveled the world to compete I guess before the 765 I hit at nationals, every single time I ever squat over 750 in competition was an international level meet. And I can tell you right now, a lot of times things don't go your way. The environment definitely changes. Sometimes the equipment changes. Food is a big one. Going into meets, obviously I cut, so I have to have a totally different food protocol when it comes to recomping. There's just so much that changes. But because I don't rely on the externals and place my value, I'll say, or my ability to perform, I don't judge my ability to perform on my externals. Because instead I rely on my own ability to adapt, so it's completely internal, if any of this changes, I'm good. I adapt. That doesn't mean it's optimal, the fact that it's changing and taking me out of my routine, but it's outside of my control. So next best is for me to just adapt and do my best. It's not about how many resources we have, it's how resourceful we are with what we have, okay? So you'd be surprised, man. You can handle a lot. You can deal with a lot. You can tank a lot to the face, but don't do that if you don't have to, okay? All right, let's move on to the second one. Okay, so point number 2, very simple. Again, this is the warm-up before the warm-up. So what do I mean by this? The best warm-ups for squats are gonna be squats, okay? You get under the bar and you start squatting. That's considered a warm-up, and that's probably why a lot of you guys are watching this video. You wanna know, okay, what are my jumps? How many warm-ups should I be taking? And we're gonna talk about that. But what's important to recognize is sometimes it's really good to get ready for getting under the bar. Okay, you don't wanna just get under the bar because sometimes you're really stiff, you're really achy, and yeah, I mean, to be completely honest with you, it just hurts. It just sucks to just start squatting this moment you walk into the gym. And every athlete exists on a spectrum here. I know some athletes who warm up for 30 minutes straight. They just roll out and stuff like that. That could never be me. I know other athletes who just walk into the gym, get straight under the bar. I know some athletes who get under the bar and they don't even take just the bar. They're loading up 400 or 500 pounds as their first warm up, okay? That to me is a little psychotic, but to each their own, all right? Now, again, it's completely context dependent. This is completely preference. You can do what you'd like, but this is my 2 cents. Do something dynamic, not static, all right? This is kind of obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people don't realize this. Static stretching sucks for warming up. It's just not great. Dynamic stretching, way better. Dynamic just means moving. So you're spending time in deep stretches or in a stretch position, but you're moving through it. So like, for example, like an air squat, right? Instead of just sitting in a deep air squat, and just really stretching, or doing like a pigeon stretch or something like that, right? Or whichever the pigeon stretch is. I think this is a quad stretch, whatever. Anyway, yeah, as you can tell, I don't stretch much. Instead of like holding a position, being static, you're being dynamic. So if you were to do the air squats, you're gonna sit into a deep squat, move around, right? Then come up, do a few reps, right? Again, focusing on that deep stretch, but then again, coming up, you're moving, you're increasing blood flow and increasing your sweat, meaning you're getting your heart rate up, you're moving around, you're getting your body ready for the bar, okay? In my opinion, if you static stretch, you're setting yourself up for failure. Why? Because you're spending time in positions only lengthening. But what we're preparing our body to do is to be concentrically focused, to be powerful, to be explosive. Think about how it feels when you spent 5 minutes holding a stretch. Once you get out of that stretched position, you feel really relaxed and loose, right? Is that how I want to feel when I get under 700 pounds? No, not at all. In fact, I want to feel the opposite. I want to feel explosive. I want to feel almost tight. I want to feel ready. I want to feel like a coil, right? Like a spring coil that gets compressed and then explodes with energy. That's what I want. So that's why we use dynamic as opposed to static stretching when it comes to warming up, okay? So the warm up before the warm up, it's very simple. Do what you need in order to get unstiff and to get your blood flow up. My general recommendation, and this is very simple, jumping jacks, 25 to 50 jumping jacks are great. Great way to get your heart rate up. Kind of gets the whole body moving. Then I go into heavy dumbbell goblet squats. They don't have to be super heavy, but heavy enough where it kind of forces me down into a stretch position, right? And I can start to get a little unstiff. Again, maybe I do a few reps with it, elevate my heels, just play around with it. And then the last thing I sometimes do is like leg swings, just stuff to kind of just open up the hips a little bit more, get them a little bit loose and ready to go. I also do some breathing exercises prior to, but again, all this stuff is very preference, okay? And if you're injured or if you're rehabbing an injury, that's gonna change how you go about this, but just know that having a warm-up before the warm-up can be really important. Time to get into point number 3, but before we do, I just wanna give a shout out to my apparel sponsor, AYBL. You can use code GAVIN10 for 10% off to support. It really does mean a lot to me. I wear an XL in pretty much everything. It's a UK brand, man. They make shit for like skinny guys. I don't know what to say, man. I'm thick 3 C's. You know what I'm saying? And on that note, if you are gonna purchase shorts, my number 1 recommendation is to go with the Run line. The Run shorts are very stretchy, super comfortable, very stretchy. I beat the crap out of them. I squat in them, deadlift them. I mean, everything. The core shorts are great, but they're not gonna stretch. Okay, so just be mindful of that. I believe this is a core t-shirt. Looks pretty good, man. I feel like I look pretty handsome. So yeah, anyway, okay, let's move on. So point number 3, now we are under the bar. This is the meat and potatoes of warming up for a new 1 rep max, right? This is the moment you have all been waiting for. But stick around because there's a couple of other points that are actually really, really important, in my opinion, might even be more important than this. Okay, so I need to preface this again with the fact that A, you should not be deviating from what you normally do. This is not the time to take a bunch more warm-up sets than you normally take, or take a bunch of less, okay? Try not to deviate too much from what you're used to, from what you normally do. B, the second thing is, I want you guys to be incredibly focused and intentional when going about your warm-up sets. Okay, that has to be said, because if you're not, it defeats the whole purpose of them. Because otherwise, you're just not gonna be prepared for that top set, no matter how many sets you take. Okay, in fact, you could take 2 warm-up sets, but if you truly focused, really made sure you were executing them to the best of your ability and they were perfect, you'd probably be ready for your top set right there. So again, just make sure that you are focused and you're intentful when it comes to this. Now, the last thing I'll say is everyone is different. So just because this is, I'm gonna give you my recommendation, my opinion on this, doesn't mean it's gonna work for you. So I encourage you to simply do what you think is best, but I'm gonna give you my general recommendation. Okay, let's talk about it. So how many warm-up sets should you be taking? Well, to answer this, we have to talk about the jumps, the pacing going into that 1 rep max, okay? In my opinion, I like small to medium jumps for squat. I used to take massive jumps for squat. In fact, I take massive jumps on bench. For example, I'll go from 375 all the way up to 475. I take massive jumps on deadlift. I'll jump more than 100 pounds from my last warm-up to my top set, and I'll maybe even take only 2 to 3 warm-ups at all when it comes to deadlifts, right? On bench, I'm taking like 3 warm-ups before some of my top sets. So I like big jumps when it comes to that, but for squat is finicky, man. Squat requires so much technical proficiency and it hurts the most. It just sucks, you know what I mean? So I just need that much more time to get warm and to feel ready and to feel prepared and to gauge where I'm at for the day. So I like to take small to medium jumps because then it means I get more sets in. The other thing too is it helps me gauge again where I'm gonna be at. Now, mind you, small to medium means different things to different people, okay? For me, that may mean 50 to 100 pounds. That's like a medium jump. But for, maybe a super light female who weighs 130 pounds or 115 pounds, something like that, the 15 to 25 pound jump may be a small to medium jump for them, right? So it really is context dependent. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just what is small to medium for you. Now, I feel bad just leaving you with that. I have to give you some sort of baseline. So I'm gonna say your last warm-up should be around RP 8 to 8.5, okay? That's in my opinion. I think that that's a clean second attempt in a meet. I think that this is smart because this is just hard enough and heavy enough for you to get an accurate gauge as to what your top end should be. Gonna get an accurate gauge as to how you're feeling technically, right? But it's not so hard and so heavy that's gonna completely kill you and gas you for that next set. You're not basically taking the same number twice, you know what I mean? So that's what I would say. Aim and pace yourself so that your last warm-up is around an RP 8 to RP 8.5. Okay, that would be my general recommendation. Again, small to medium set jumps, I just think that that's the way to go when it comes to squats. Now, how many reps? This is, again, maybe highly debated. I don't know. In my opinion, I'm a little bit lazy. I opt for less reps. Less is more, in my opinion. I justify my laziness by saying that I just don't want to be out of energy and gassed going into my top set. And here's what I will say. There are extremes, right? If you only do 1 rep of every single set, you can't possibly feel super prepared and warm for your top set. Although, I'm going to be honest with you, that's usually what I do. But maybe that's why I always feel like shit on my top set. On the other end of the extreme, you don't want to take 10 reps or 20 reps with a weight, unless it's like your very first warm up with just the bar or 135 or something like that, because it's just, you're going to gas yourself. There's just no point, right? Also, it's not specific. Like, you're only getting 1 rep, unless you're testing a 3-rep max. You're only getting 3 reps even, right? So the idea is we want to practice our ability to perform given the constraints we're going to have to perform in or perform with when we test, right? So how many reps? My general recommendation would be 3 to 5 earlier on, 1 to 3 when you're in that middle zone, and then 1 rep once you get past a certain point. Now for this, we can use a percentage just because I think it actually might be helpful. I know I'm a complete hypocrite to myself, but let's do 0.8 times 765. What number does it give us? Okay, that's cool. Okay, so I would say once you're approaching 80% of your current 1 rep max, switch over to singles for sure. Yeah, I think that anything over a single or anything more than a single for anything 80% or more, it's probably just going to fatigue you, and it's just not worth it. I'd rather you actually take more warm-up sets over 80%, but as singles, than to take 1 set that's a double or a triple or something like that, believe it or not. But that's just my opinion. Again, you can do whatever you'd like. So yeah, before I get to this last point, I just have to say here, remember the goal, okay? This is completely context dependent, because remember the goal. The goal is to be ready for your top end squat. To PR or for meet day, you have to make sure that you're prepared. So do what you need to do to prepare for it. Don't think like, oh my gosh, like how many warm-up sets should I take? And should I do this number or this number? Guys, it doesn't fucking matter. What matters is that you feel confident, you feel ready, and you feel you're simply ready to perform at your best. So whatever you need to do that. If you find like as you're warming up, you're like, bro, man, I don't know, man, I don't feel good. I don't feel as great. You know what? I normally wouldn't take an extra warm-up set, but let me take 1 more warm-up set just to feel things out. Cool, do that. That's totally okay. What I don't want you guys to do is to make decisions out of fear and out of anxiety, out of nervousness, right? Because that's when we hesitate, that's when we make mistakes, that's when we make decisions based on lies. It's different when it's based on the truth. You can make decisions that are different from what you normally do when it's rooted in the truth. But when it's rooted in lies, which is, I don't know if I'm ready, I don't know if I can do this, not the answer. And I'll give you one example before we move on to point number 4. There's a woman at the War Room gym that I go to in Whippany. Very sweet woman. She was deadlifting, and she takes these deadlift attempts, building up to like her 1 rep max. I know we're talking about squat, but it's the same theory, same concept. And she would take these attempts so freaking close to each other. Your body doesn't know the difference between 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 20 pounds. It doesn't know, it just feels weight, right? So, but your mind does, right? Your mind perceives that. And so what she was doing was she was scared, she was nervous she may not have the top end, she was nervous about it, right? So she would just keep getting closer and closer and closer. She would take like 10-pound jumps or be within 10 pounds of this number that she's going for her last set. The problem is it would fatigue the shit out of her, and no shit, because she's basically taking the same number over and over and over again before she takes that top set. And so my point to you is this: don't allow the lies, which is, I don't know if I'm capable, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I should do this, you know what? Don't allow that to dictate your decision making. If instead she said, you know what, I feel great, I feel strong, but you know what, I want to take 1 more jump in between. I know it's close, but I want to do this because on meet day I might have to do this. Then I agree with the decision. All right, so that's all I'm going to say. Now, consider meet day. Before we move on to point number 4, we actually have to talk about this. Consider meet day. All this means is if you are a competitive powerlifter, if you plan on competing, then you have to keep in mind what the day is going to look like in terms of your attempt selection and warm-ups as at a competition when you are doing this in training. Okay, because you want everything to be the same. I know a coach, he's a great guy, Matt Gary, I'll say his name, phenomenal guy, he's a phenomenal coach, everybody loves him, I think he's phenomenal, I think he's great for the sport, all this stuff. This is nothing against him, but this is something that's unique to him, and so it's worth mentioning. I hired him to help me out with some of my game day decisions a couple years ago, and one of the things he did was he wrote up this whole like new warm-up structure. And to him, it's very efficient to do it this way, and I get what he's saying. I respectfully disagree with it because it deviates from what I normally do. So now all of a sudden I'm taking weights that I normally wouldn't take. Think about it, dude, like every week for years, multiple times a week, I'm following the same exact warm-up structure. I put a red on, maybe I put 2 reds on, 3 reds on, 4 reds on. Okay, now I put a blue. Now I put another red with a green and a collar, and now I'm taking 700, right? That's what I do every fucking time. So now the most important day of my life, a world championship or a meet, I'm gonna change that? Doesn't make sense to me. right? And I get what he's saying. He's being more efficient. He's saving your energy and all that stuff. That's fine. If that works for people, that's great. In my opinion, I just don't agree with that. I don't think that's smart. Instead, if you know that that's how you're going to do it on meet day, do that in training. Do that in the preparation. Don't just change it for meet day. So consider meet day. Consider like, okay, if you're going to go for a PR squat in training, right? What would my opener be? What would my second attempt be? Okay, cool, maybe I should make it so that my warm-ups line up like that. What would my last warm-up be for my opener on meet day? Like, do that. And I started doing that in my training, and it was phenomenal because not only was I reinstilling this behavior that I'd have to replicate in training, or in meet day, but I also got literally double the amount of practice with these loads on my primary squat day. So instead of jumping from, let's say, like 640 to 716 or 722, which I'm not gonna lie to you, I did yesterday, but instead of doing that, the smart way would be take the 683 before you take 716 or 720 or 750, right? Why? Because in a meet, I'd probably be opening at 683 and making that big jump, right? And so not only that, I'm getting more practice around that load. Whereas if I only take the 640, I'm not really getting as much practice around that 700 range because I took 640. But if I took 683, now I'm getting twice as much practice at that range because I'm taking 683 and then that next attempt, right? Or that top set. You see what I'm saying? So you just want to be thinking of these things, okay? So just remember, if the goal is to not deviate from what we normally do, then why don't we instill these awesome plans that we have to warm up a certain way or take certain sets as warm-ups and stuff like that on meet day? Why don't we implement them in now, right? Okay, cool. Whew, that was a mouthful. All right, point number 4. Point number 4, guys, we're almost there. Mindset. This is, of course, going to be very important. We'd be here all day if I really broke down everything that it takes to have the right mindset when it comes to hitting PRs across the board, let alone in a squat especially. If you guys haven't, check out my free mindset ebook. I wrote it back in 2021, just before I flew to Sweden during COVID to compete and win my first world championship. It was a junior world championship. A lot of people it has resonated with, it has resonated with a lot of people. And in there, I talk all about mindset. In fact, I'm in the process of updating that whole thing. So I'm excited to release that, hopefully within the year. But anyway, my point is mindset is very important. We're not going to dive into everything here, but there are some major pieces that we want to cover. The first is music. We have to lock in. We have to focus, okay? We have to put ourselves in a position to succeed. And I'm going to be honest with you, man. You are expecting your body to do something it has never done before. If you're trying to hit a 500 squat for the first time, it's the first time. You're a human being putting 500 pounds on your back. There's nothing normal about that. So why do you think you can approach that normally? It doesn't make sense. You have to elevate your mindset. Now, I'm not saying you have to get super crazy and amped up and hyped up and sniff ammonia and all that stuff. If you like to do that, great. If you normally would do that, great. But if that's not you, don't do that. All I want you to do is elevate yourself in whatever way that brings true for you. I know guys who just have a ton of fun. They're dancing all the time. Delaney Wallace dances all the time. He's always laughing. He's funny. He's happy. He doesn't get all like crazy amped up and, I'm going to rip your throat out shit. Like that's more my style, right? So I wouldn't expect him to do that, but I would expect him to come alive. Why? Because he's expecting himself to do something he's never done before, to go hard. So that requires an elevated spirit, I'm going to call it, okay? We want to be somewhat fired up. We want to be on, all right? Now, music is an easy way to manipulate that, all right? Make a playlist. I have my own lifting playlist. It's got a couple thousand downloads, which is pretty crazy. I've got over 470 songs in there. I'm constantly adding new stuff in. It's just Gavin Aiden on Spotify. I think I just titled it as lifting playlist. It's really dope. It's a mix of like metal, rap, EDM, a whole bunch of stuff. Music is really important, so just try and have a playlist preloaded, even if it's 20 songs, 30 songs, because I've been in this situation where I have a heavy squat, and I'm just trying to think like, okay, what song do I want to play? What song? This is so important to me. What song? And I'm sitting there spending way too long trying to find a song that I really want to listen to try and get me amped up enough. Nah, fuck all that. Let's come prepared, and let's have a playlist ready. Don't catastrophize. This is actually going to be a little bit different than what most people would tell you. I personally think that at the end of the day, we're just lifting weights. We're just squatting. That's all it is. Sometimes we take it a little too seriously, okay? We care just a little bit too much. There has to be a balance, all right? Now, I'm not saying not to give a shit. Of course we give a shit. Of course we want to be successful. But what does it mean in the grand scheme of things? The way I like to think about it, to avoid this squat or this moment weighing so heavy in my head, is I take my power back. I take energy from it. How? I take it and I give it to something else. And I'm going to walk through some of those things. But one of those things is this shift in perspective, which is I'm not going to catastrophize and aggrandize this moment. It is what it is. I'm getting under a barbell and I'm squatting, and that's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm taking weight down and up. That's it. There is somebody right now fighting on the front lines for my freedom, for my ability to do this. Don't you think that that's a little bit more extreme, a little bit more severe, a little bit more serious and life-threatening? There's a single mother of 7 right now, struggling to feed her children, working 3 jobs. Don't you think that that's more severe, more extreme? Don't you think that's more challenging? Of course. So it changes, it doesn't invalidate the experience. It's true, we're about to squat something heavy. But it uses the truth to reframe everything. Perspective really does matter here. And again, the idea here is to diminish fear, to diminish doubt, to diminish anxiety, because that's what's going to hold you back. Dr. David Cook once said performance equals potential minus interference. And it's true. The interference is fear. A lot of times it's fear. That's what's holding you back from completely unlocking your potential. Flow state. You ever hear of flow state? A lot of wrestlers talk about it. You get into this flow state. Well, as an athlete, you enter this flow state. What makes it so special is you feel free. You're just having fun. It's pure joy. Joy and fear cannot coexist. That's why the Bible tells us that, right? So anyway, my point is, without getting too deep, don't catastrophize. Next, trust your training, trust your technique, okay? Can you see that? Yeah. Very important. Told this to a client a while ago. He was having a lot of doubt and hesitation, and he would hit these awesome numbers in training. Come meet day, he would feel great, but then he just wouldn't hit the numbers in comp day. And I'm like, oh, dude, what's going on? And we tried to work through it. And once we worked through it, we got to the bottom of it. The bottom of it was he was uncertain. He was listening to the lies. Don't listen to the lies. Listen to the truth. The truth is you have more than enough evidence from your training to tell you that you are completely capable of this and more. So why would you believe anything other than that? Now listen, if you squat super high in training all the time and you max out all the time and your training was shit and your recovery was shit and all that stuff, yeah, you're going to have to trust that, right? Otherwise, you have to be completely delusional, which is okay, but be completely delusional that things aren't going to go that way, despite all of your training data and training history showing you that it's going to go the other way, right? But if you're actually on point, if you left no stone unturned, if you really put in the work and you really focused and your training was good and your recovery was good, what evidence do you have to believe anything other than that you're going to be successful when you attempt this, right? And trust your technique. Trust your technique, dude. You've been practicing this movement over and over and over and over again, right? And since we're not deviating from what we normally do, you can trust exactly what you've been doing. So again, the idea here is to reframe. We want to eliminate the interference. We do that by trusting the training. It's something that's real. It's something hardcore. Trust in the technique. Now, lastly, I want you to fully commit. This cannot be stated enough, dude. Do or do not, there is no try. Just because it's heavy doesn't mean you can't do it. I mean, I've got a ton of these things, right? Loaded up. You have to fully commit because if you don't, you're not going to get it. It's that simple. Squats, I mean, really any heavy lift, there's no room for doubt. There's no room for hesitation. It's either we're going to do it or we're not. We're jumping in or we're not. It's black and white. That's it. Black or white. That's just what it is, dude. You can't half-ass it, especially when it's a 1 rep max. So once you get under that bar, you make the decision to yourself, I don't give a fuck if I die under here. I've made the decision to get under this weight. I am coming up with it or I'm dying, period. That's it. It is black or white. Yes or no, I am doing this or I am not. I'm doing this, then that's it. There's no, oh shit, I don't know, maybe I should react. There's no, eliminate all of that. Fully commit. Boom, up, boom, boom, boom. I'm a fucking machine at this point. I feel nothing, no emotion whatsoever. I have a job to do, and I'm gonna do my fucking job, and that's it. I'm gonna trust my technique. I'm gonna come down, power that motherfucker back up, bring it back in, done. That's it. That's it. Fully commit. Okay, so mindset is extremely important. Make sure you sharpen that, work on that. Yeah, any cues you want to write them down, sure. I do have a video on this too, so definitely check it out if you haven't. But yeah, mindset. All right, time for the 5th and final point. 5th and final point here, this one anybody can implement, which I think is really cool. This is something that's not just like up in the air. This is something that you can do starting tomorrow, hypothetically, and notice a difference. I really want you guys to nail your pre/intra-session nutrition. Okay, it's really important. I tell all my clients this, and if they want it, I give them kind of like my general recommendation. But in short, number one, stick to liquids. Okay, your body can use that faster and more efficiently. All right, digests it faster. Doesn't have to break down the food. Right, it's a liquid. So use liquids. My go-to is electrolytes, carbs, water, and I do use pre-workout. Okay, sometimes pre-workout does already have electrolytes in it. Sure, that's fine. Sometimes pre-workout even has carbs in it. Sure, that's fine. But really, with the pre-workout, we're using for stimulant, for caffeine, essentially. All right. The way that I generally recommend it is up to 400 milligrams of caffeine on a day like your 1 RM day. If you don't normally drink pre-workout or caffeine, today is not the day to go crazy. If you want to have a little bit, sure. But again, do not deviate, because you might do it and it might make you feel really weird and shitty, make you feel jittery, or your skin crawling because of the beta alanine or something like that, right? And now everything's going to feel really off, right? So again, if you don't normally do this, don't do it, okay? But I do think that it's totally feasible for you to leverage caffeine to help you feel a little bit more alive and awake. And quote unquote energized, although it's not really energy, it's fake energy. Now, one habit of mine that I've gotten into is, as the weeks go on throughout a training block, I actually increase the dose of caffeine, and then again, reset it once we enter new blocks. So week 1, I may take just cups of coffee, right? Like a black cup of coffee. But then week 2, I might have an actual pre-workout. Maybe it has 200 to 250 milligrams of caffeine per scoop. Then the 3rd week, I might bump it up to 350, and then that 4th week, maybe I'll have 400 on my primary session, something like that, okay? So that's pre-workout. But yeah, electrolyte, carbs, water, this is extremely important. I'm not saying that this is just important for the day that you're going to go for your PR. This is important to do every single training day. Every single training day. Keep this consistent. You want to maximize performance across the board. Plus, you want to know how you're going to feel, right? I have 1 gram to sometimes 2 grams of sodium in my pre-workout like shake. Sometimes it's a little less. It depends on how I'm feeling. But that's a lot of salt. But the reason why is because it bloats me up. It helps me retain my water. I feel really good. Carbs, I have anywhere between 25 to 50 grams of carbs, usually through a powder form. Could be dextrose, could be maltodextrin, whatever it is, cluster dextrin. And again, that goes into the shake. And again, it's water. So I do all of that. And the reason why I do that is because if I were to recomp after a gut cut or a water cut or something like that, or even if I didn't have to cut weight for a meet, I'd still be doing this because I want to stay carbed up. And I want to make sure I'm retaining my water. I'm making sure I'm hydrated. All that stuff is really important when it comes to squatting heavy, especially. In fact, you'd be surprised how many people are dehydrated going into these sessions, and that's why they fuck up, honestly. So yeah, man. So that's food. Okay, so you want to be consistent. Now is not the time, in my opinion. Now is not the time to go crazy with the gummy bears and the sugar, like the candy and all that stuff like that. If you don't normally do that, don't do that now. You also don't need it, dude. You just don't need it, okay? But this, by the way, could be anything you want. I just recommend some water with some electrolytes and maybe pre-workout. If you want to have your carbs be fruit or something like that, that's totally fine. But making sure that you're well-fueled and hydrated for the session is going to be really, really important. Okay, now before we wrap up, I'm gonna give you a bonus tip, and we're gonna talk about timing. Truthfully, I simply forgot to talk about timing when talking about under the bar, the warm-ups. So we're just gonna include it here, so I apologize. But timing is actually really, really important. Yeah, of course, again, this is gonna be completely context dependent, but how much time should you be taking between warm-ups? What should that look like? I just want you guys to be mindful that you're here to perform, you're here to do a job, okay? Not to talk, not to fuck around. So be serious, be focused. It's that simple, okay? How would you approach your training if you were serious and focused? Think about it that way. Okay, so in short, in my opinion, I think that for your earlier warm-ups, especially when the weight's pretty light, meaning sub 80%, you could probably only need like 2 to 3 minutes, maybe, for your warm-ups. Okay, so I like to keep that fast. That way, once I get to my heavier stuff, anything over 80%, I can take like 5 minutes or so. But the biggest thing here is rest, at least in my opinion, 5 minimum, 10 minutes maximum before 1 RM, okay? Really, really important. Now, let's say your 1 rep max is 750 pounds, and I take 700 pounds for my last warm-up. Well, 700 pounds is still pretty heavy. So I may still want to take 5 to 10 minutes before 700 pounds, even though it's my last warm-up. But the reason why I'm not giving you that as a rule is because everyone's different, and in a meet, you may not have that time. You just might not, okay? So what I like to do is I think about a meet atmosphere, and the worst meets I've ever been to in terms of how fast they run has been world championships. They've always been like 7 to 8 minutes in between, which is nothing, especially when you consider the amount of time it takes you to literally walk on and off the platform, just sit down, chill out. I mean, bro, it literally feels like you only have like 5 minutes and you're going again, right? So I try and prepare myself for that. So that's why I give myself at max 10 minutes, but I like to make sure my minimum is 5 minutes again, because I need to get used to those fast turnarounds. But in my opinion, 5 to 8 minutes is perfect for a new, for a heavy set. The goal here, remember, is performance. It's strength output. You need to express your strength. So what's going to set yourself up for success there? Some people, they feel great when they have short rest periods because they keep their blood flowing, they feel good. Personally, I like to take a little bit more time. Some people like to take a lot of time. I think that that's not always optimal because you don't want to go cold, right? You also want something that can be replicated on game day if you do compete. And if you take 20 minutes in between sets, like that's just, you can't do that on meet day. Unless it's like one of those federations that's not like IPF or USAPL. Like usually though, they have, from what I've heard, like 10 to 15 minutes in between, sometimes more. I've heard of stories of guys competing in meets, guys, that like they could literally go up to their hotel room in between squat and bench. That's crazy. That's crazy. So in a normal competition setting, you're going to have about 2.5 to 3.5 hours to compete. So if you break that down, you really only have, let's say, like at most 12 minutes in between each attempt. Maybe 14 if it's like really big flights and shit. But yeah, 12 minutes is what I would bank on. So on the closer end, more like 8. So yeah, that's how much you should rest. Again, in the earlier warm-ups, I would say 2 to 3 minutes. Just to reiterate, a little bit later, maybe 5 minutes. And then once you get to like the last couple warm-ups, you're looking at that 5 to 10, okay? 8 is a nice sweet spot. I would say around 8 minutes is when you should start getting your wrist wraps ready and all that stuff together, okay? Because then by the time you hit record and you get under the bar, you're now at 10 minutes of rest, okay? So that's that quote unquote bonus tip there. But guys, that's everything I have for you. Yes, there is more we could talk about, but this should set you up for success when it comes to hitting your 1 rep max. Again, just keep in mind that, in my opinion, small to medium jumps are great. You want your last warm-up to be somewhere around RP 8 to RP 8.5. Again, consider the meet. Consider what you would have to do in a meet. Consider the timing of that, all right? Stay focused, stay confident, and lock the fuck in, baby. If we want to take the island, burn the boats. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. Again, would love to work with you. If you're looking for a coach, one-to-one coaching is available. You can apply the link in the description, and the Ultimate Squat System PDF is available for pre-order. So yeah, man. Really appreciate all the support, guys. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.